I don't know about y'all, but I could do with a little rewind, a little look back, a little nostalgia right about now. And I can always go for some quality time with beautiful art. So it's a good thing the Other Art Fair is back in Chicago, April 9th through the 12th. This year's theme is Nostalgia Core. So you can find a curated selection of interactive artist-led projects that celebrate those memories that make us, a little misty-eyed. Support 115 plus independent artists and meet them in person at Artifact events in Ravenswood. Tickets start at just $20. Book them now at theotherartfair.com. Today on CityCast Chicago, we are checking in on some big stories, including CPD's federal consent decree progress, a safety net hospital on the Oak Park-Austin border, and Lincoln Park Zoo's cutest new resident. It's Friday, March 27th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I am joined by two amazing voices this morning from WTTW. Heather Sharon, good to see you, my friend.
I am glad to be back.
Hey, 5 years and you still rocking with us. I appreciate you making time. We've also got from Block Club Chicago, investigative reporter Manny Ramos in the building. Manny, how you doing?
Hey, doing well. Great to be back on.
We are officially in spring, no matter what the weather outside of our window wants to do, from hour to hour, day to day. Heather, what's something you're looking forward to in spring?
Well, I'm just looking forward to being able to drive down Lakeshore Drive with my windows open. Like, that is a top tier way that I mark the changing of the seasons. And there is nothing like just getting in the car, driving all the way from Hollywood, all the way down to the Museum of Science and Industry, and then back again. And I don't get to do it a lot because, work, kids, family, etc. But that is a top tier sort of let's just decompress and mark the changing of the season Chicago activity, because some people don't know that the skyline is best seen coming from the south side, and people
100%
people don't know. And then
Dan Ryan, Lakeshore Drive, don't matter.
Yeah. However, will I be doing that today? No. Anytime soon? No, because could it hail? Could it thunderstorm? Could it snow? It sure can.
I was on Lakeshore Drive this past weekend before it started raining, windows down, arm out the window. And anytime it feels good outside, y'all, I think about how, compared to my mom, I will never be as cool as she was in the 90s, because I just think back to 98, sitting in the back seat, the window down, and she got her foot out the window, just chilling, just rolling up Lakeshore Drive with the foot out the window. My mama was so cool, y'all, the coolest person I ever met. And so while I am not going to do that, anytime it is good outside and we can put the windows down, that's the first memory I have.
That's great.
Maddie, what is something you're looking forward to in spring?
Oh, man, just walks around the neighborhood again, right? My daughters are trying to learn how to ride their bikes, so going to be focusing on that this spring, and hopefully we can nail that down. So that's what I'm mostly looking forward to.
That's very exciting. Yeah, getting outside on the bike, walking around, cruising up Lakeshore Drive. Y'all got it figured out. I love that for y'all. Let's get into these stories today. Heather, you are typically the person I'm talking to when I need updates on the Chicago Police Department's compliance or lack thereof with the federal consent decree, which, as you wrote this week, is designed to force the department to change the way it trains, supervises, and disciplines officers due to a violent history of violating folks' rights, torture, and murder. It has been around for more than 7 years. Now, I don't have you here necessarily to tell me how far they've gotten on the entire thing. 22%.
Correct.
Or how much Chicago has paid out over just the last 5 years for police misconduct. $300 million. But rather to ask whether or not CPD has implemented what to me feels like one of the most critical parts of the consent decree, a system that at the very least better tracks and flags officers who have several abuse allegations against them. Where are we at with this system, which I imagine will allow everyone from civilian-led organizations to the mayor's office to CPD themselves have a better sense of who is in their camp?
Well, it seems like it's a pretty reasonable ask, right? Like if you're a police officer who has had either multiple complaints or multiple lawsuits, you would think that, technology has advanced to the point where like their supervisor would get a little pop-up notification, an email, text message, whatever it is to say, hey, this officer seems to be having some trouble following the rules. And this is what happened. And here's, the context of that. So here's what our policy says should happen now. We should go talk to that officer. We should encourage that officer to reach out for counseling. We should encourage that officer to be retrained on policies, or we should start a disciplinary process. That system is required by the consent decree, which, as you said, took effect in March of 2019. So it has been a long time coming. This system has gone through any number of sort of iterations dating all the way back to former Mayor Daley. So all the way back. And there's a new system that CPD apparently started constructing back in 2023. And I got the first look at sort of what's actually going on behind the scenes. And we learned two very important things. One, the earliest possible time for the system to be in place will be 2027. So almost a full calendar year before now. And it is, I think, somewhat unlikely whether they will even meet that deadline, because the policy setting out this system has to be crafted. It has to be approved by the federal court. It has to be approved by the Illinois Attorney General's office. And it's also subject to negotiation by a bunch of police reform groups that sued the city to force it to agree to the consent decree. Approving new policies for CPD is a very long, drawn-out process. So it's going to be a while still. And the other thing is that we learned that the firm that the city has hired to craft the system is led by a name that should be familiar to all Chicagoans. Ron Huberman served as former Mayor Daley's chief of staff. He led the CTA, he led CPS, and he led the Office of Emergency Management and Communications. So he is somebody who has a lot of ties to sort of Chicago establishment.
It's a Forrest Claypool kind of resume.
Yes, absolutely. Part of that whole Daley sort of, core. But it's not clear sort of what the city is doing in the meantime to prevent officers from being repeatedly subject to misconduct complaints, sort of causing a lot of pain and trauma to people on the streets of Chicago, and then costing the taxpayers a lot of money in lawsuit settlements. And I've written about several cases just in the last month or so where officers have been suspended repeatedly for pretty much the same behavior, which is exactly what this system is designed to stop.
How do you feel that current superintendent Larry Snelling, how much momentum or how much effort is he putting into the consent decree? And conversations you and I've had, I've gotten this sense that for leadership in the FOP inside of CPD, that this is a nuisance. This is something people don't want to be working towards. This makes their job somehow more difficult, right? More accountability, transparent, better systems to protect Chicagoans, right? The mission statement of this whole thing. How do you feel Snelling's attitude is toward the consent decree and the progress CPD is or isn't making?
Well, if you talk to the people involved with enforcing the consent decree, so the federal judge, the monitoring team that reports to the judge, and the coalition, they will say that Larry Snelling has shown much more willingness to sort of put his shoulder into this work than any of the other previous superintendents, going back to Eddie Johnson and then David Brown and now Larry Snelling. But as you said, sort of at the beginning of this conversation, CPD has only complied with 22% of this agreement in full. Now, the superintendent is very proud of the fact that the department has reached preliminary and secondary compliance on a lot of the issues. The problem is that preliminary compliance is just we have a policy. Secondary compliance is when we've trained officers on that policy. It's not until full compliance that the department has to demonstrate that, hey, we're actually following these new rules. We're actually doing something differently on the streets of Chicago. And that has proved really, really difficult. And I think that there are a lot of questions about whether or not sort of CPD's, sort of leadership is committed to the consent decree. There are a lot of people in the reform community who say this is not going to work. This is not how change happens, because you cannot sort of new policy your way to a culture change within the police department. And I think that that is sort of the larger question that I try to think about when I'm writing about this, because it's really easy to sort of keep your focus on just sort of the like numbers and the policies and that sort of thing. But, I think that the larger question is sort of, because the consent decree prompted by the Laquan McDonald police murder, prompted by a federal investigation, the question I try to keep in mind is, does, your average Chicagoan, Black, Latino, are they experiencing anything differently on the streets of Chicago today in 2026 than they would have in 2014, 2015, 2016? And I think that's very much an open question.
Hi, CityCast listeners. This is David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, but I also have another job. I'm one of the hosts of the Political Gabfest, Slate's politics podcast. Every week, I get on mic with my co-hosts Emily Bazelon and John Dickerson, and we talk about politics and a lot more about other things that we care about. The Gabfest has been going for more than 20 years because the three of us love talking to each other, and we have an amazing community of listeners. If you like the open-hearted, curious way CityCast approaches cities, I think you'll like the Political Gabfest too. Stream it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
We have covered a lot of sudden, temporary, and permanent closures in my time on the podcast: schools, grocery and drug stores, shelters, small businesses, and they can all have a devastating impact on neighborhoods. Manny, you are currently following a fast-moving story at West Suburban Hospital. Can you catch us up?
Yeah, so I guess just briefly here, I've been covering West Suburban for a story I've been working on for well over a year now. That's hopefully to come out, sooner than later. But to start off, let's just understand where West Suburban is. West Suburban Medical Center is a hospital in Oak Park. It borders the Austin neighborhood. Predominantly, it serves mostly Austin neighbors, low-income folks, highly, Medicaid population. And the current owners, Resilience Healthcare, purchased the hospital back in 2022 for $92 million. It was part of a package deal that included Weiss Memorial Hospital that's up over in Uptown.
Oh, that does not give me a lot of confidence, because I know some people listening here, Weiss Hospital, and they're like, hold on. Kobe, didn't y'all talk about that last summer? Yes, when they suspended their emergency care services, had to start rerouting patients to other hospitals due to financial challenges, and the community has fought for months to try to reopen some of those programs to no real successes. And so the fact that Weiss Hospital and West Suburban are owned by the same corporation, I think, is an important element in this story.
Yeah, it is also part of a larger trend, to your point there, right? These are two hospitals that cater to a very underserved population in many ways. To focus first on West Suburban, and we can definitely circle back to Weiss because I think there's a lot there. West Suburban has been having many issues over the past few years since the hospital was purchased. IDPH has routinely, went into the hospital to investigate, complaints and concerns of how patients are being treated. But the recent announcement that the hospital is closing came this week by the owner, Manoj Prasad, who said that because of some sort of transition between its billing system had caused them to not bill patients properly for close to a year, which then resulted in the hospital missing revenue for that year. In an internal email that we received, the president CEO Prasad said that they were operating on 10% of revenue that they needed to function the hospital. And as a result, in order to meet payroll, they wouldn't meet it, so they needed to shut the hospital down. So what we learned is yesterday that they are closing the hospital starting Friday. Ambulatory services, such as services that are brought by the emergency department, have already shuttered, and those patients are now being transferred or have already been transferred to hospitals around the city. And now we're left with a vacuum in this community that is one less hospital, one less healthcare system that they can rely on. Now, this is the perspective of Prasad and how this happened. He characterizes it as sort of a technological issue with the transitioning of a new system. He claims the previous system had become obsolete and was no longer functional. It was owned by the previous owners. Folks that I've spoke with that have knowledge of the management of how the hospital is being currently ran told me that is not the entire picture. What they say happened is that Prasad skipped out on the bill of the previous billing system, this emergency medical record system. And basically this system...
he didn't pay those contractors and they they lapsed on their subscription or whatever the case may be?
Exactly. So instead of paying up on this one bill, he chose not to pay the bill, got with this new provider, this new software company that would basically do the same services. In the process of not paying that bill, he got locked out of all of the old patient records. Basically, now he doesn't have the ability to bill all of these patients. And because of that, because he lost access to that, sources tell me, they have to now physically mail out bills to patients. One source said it's like going back to the 1990s.
I was going to say, ain't this a storyline on The Pitt? I just watched it, but that was, I was going to ask, was there a cyber attack or something that shut down? But he just ain't paid a bill?
It seems self-inflicted from what I'm being told. And this is just another instance of a hospital owner who has, been skirting a lot of details, right? We're talking about a hospital that has, lost its 55-year-old program that provided young doctors teaching abilities or learning experiences to become doctors, the residency program. He lost that last June because 12 doctors came forward with complaints about how the hospital is being ran and managed. We're talking lack of supplies. One of the young doctors told me that they had one epidural kit for the entire unit, and they had 3 patients in labor, right? Like, we're talking about serious things here. Medical gloves being, scarce, gauze, and everything you think that a hospital should have, this hospital is not having. Now, to be fair to Prasad pushes back on these claims. He says they have enough supplies and everything like that. But this is just something that this is now another sort of, I guess, domino to fall in a very troubled history since he's taken over the hospital.
It very much feels like this is, one of those private equity stories that, you come in, you buy a hospital that you already, or a system that you already know had some challenges, but ultimately what it sounds like was taking place was that they were trying to cut wherever they possibly could. Supplies, staffing, programming. From reading your article and some of the other coverage, I didn't get a clean sense of, is this a temporary closure as they fix the billing system, or is that just an excuse to sort of give them more leeway, similar up in Uptown, to slowly shutter the hospital over time?
Yeah, so hospital officials, Prasad specifically, said it's temporary. This is now the third thing he said was temporary that ended up being long-term. I mean, for example, the residency program, he said that was temporary. He was going to file an appeal. We're a year into it. No appeal has been filed, and the residency program is obviously not there with the hospital closing. We look at Weiss Memorial, for example. That was supposed to be a temporary closing, and that happened because the Centers of Medicaid and Medicare Services booted them from the program because they weren't meeting federal requirements. He was supposed to appeal that. I'm not sure if the appeal ever followed through, but I do know state lawmakers pulled funding from the hospital at Weiss because they weren't getting any kind of communications that he was in the process of appealing. So this is Another instance where he claims something's temporary, but I don't know if we should believe him. Speaking with folks, again, they don't know if they would even be able to open this hospital back up. We're talking about, hundreds of employees being furloughed or fired, depending on however you want to categorize it. You're going to have to restaff this entire hospital. Federal records show that the hospital has about 600 full-time employees. So you're going to have to find 600 new people or bring in old people back to fill the hospital before you can even get the hospital back up and running. So to start a hospital from scratch like that is extremely difficult. Whether or not this current management system is able to do that, I don't know. But to your point, this is a for-profit hospital. And under this sale, what happened was there are two separate owners. You have a single owner that is responsible for the land, the property, and then you have Prasad, who sort of is the owner of the hospital itself. It's very concerning. I mean, Uptown, that piece of property where Weiss sits at, is valuable real estate. Whether or not they can simply auction that off or sell it off to a developer, I don't know. And in Oak Park, I mean, West Suburban sits in Oak Park. That's a very, valuable piece of land itself. And to be fair, Prasad doesn't own the land. I mean, right? Like his partner does. His partner may want to go in a different direction, considering all this headache that's happening right now, right? So yeah, it seems very difficult. And I should say, I mean, there should be a point of emphasis here. There are people who are losing their jobs. With less than a week notice. We're talking, again, about 600 full-time estimated employees. Those folks have to find a new job as soon as possible. I was talking to one of the workers there, an emergency room technician, and he's like, I got bills to pay. There was no notice. Why couldn't we be in notice a month ago or a week ago where we're facing this? They're given a 3-day notice that, hey, this hospital's shuttering. Good luck, essentially. It's awful on their part as well, let alone the health implications of the community itself.
For the neighborhood,
we're talking about a service or community that is extremely underserved when it comes to healthcare. Healthcare access is difficult. Just access to pharmacies alone, which the hospital provided as well. So it's just a horrible situation all around.
Heather, throughout Operation Midway Blitz last year and the scourge of immigration officers who found their way in Chicago, one thing that was at times a bright spot is the various ways Mayor Johnson was trying to coordinate city officials to push back, right? Some of those executive orders, I questioned how much they would do, like banning ICE from organizing on city-owned property, but I appreciated how prolific the Know Your Rights campaigns were across public space, public transit. But one executive order Johnson signed after Operation Midway Blitz had wound down, but just some days after immigration officials shot and killed Alex Preddy up in Minneapolis, was an order that essentially demanded of CPD to gather evidence, to start investigations, and to push all necessary information up to the state's attorney's office for ICE agents to be prosecuted. How well did that executive order go? Because it seemed like it needed multiple agencies buy-in. And this week, the mayor signaled that he isn't all that much concerned with the future of that EO.
Yeah, so this is the big question facing not just the mayor and the Chicago Police Department, but also Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke. If you cast your memory all the way back to October, there was Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, who was killed in Franklin Park by ICE agents. There has been no investigation of that shooting. And then in early October, Miramar Martinez was shot 5 times by Border Patrol agents in Brighton Park. There's been no investigation of that shooting, as best we can tell, either by local police. Now, that was sort of the status quo until the death of Alex Preddy in Minnesota, when the pressure on Democratic elected officials just reached the absolute apex that said that people were demanding that they do something to stop future shootings from happening. And so the mayor called this press conference. He signed this executive order, which basically gave CPD 30 days to come up with a new policy that would sort of set the parameters for what they were supposed to do if something like this happened again. Now, this is really complicated. It is not a straightforward issue because under most circumstances, federal officials enjoy some level of immunity if something happens while they're carrying out their official duties in a reasonable manner. Now, that word reasonable is doing a whole lot of work in that sentence. And of course, different people will believe different things are reasonable. So I was really interested. Now, this order got national attention, international attention, because people were so desperate at that time to see anybody doing anything to sort of stop what seemed like just really just out of control violence on the streets of Minneapolis and other American cities. But the proof was going to be in the pudding. What does this policy actually look like? And CPD had 30 days to develop that policy. So what do? I wait 30 days and I send the police department a Freedom of Information Act request that says, hey,
we just need to get you a little
days.
Batman utility belt that just got like a little foil, just like a
You know that I've got look, it's copy and paste because I have it all. I have the legal language all written up and everything. It takes me about 5 seconds. So I waited and I got a response back saying that they were not going to share the policy with me because it was in draft form and it had not been finalized. And that's one of the exceptions to the Freedom of Information Act, that public officials and government agencies don't have to share with us policies that are not yet final because it will make it complicated to sort of do that work. And I said, okay, that's great. Here's a story about that policy not being done by the time that the mayor said it should be done. So when the mayor had a press conference this Tuesday at City Hall, I asked him, I said, well, what's the holdup? Like you gave them 30 days. It's not done. He had gotten a lot of blowback from the state's attorney's office, who said that his order was wholly inappropriate. Now, after this order, the state's attorney, under a lot of pressure herself, went ahead and developed a new policy for her office to sort of handle these incidents. It's not really clear sort of how exactly that would work in sort of, when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, but actions are being taken. And the mayor surprised me, honestly, when he said, look, we don't actually need a new policy. We have all of the authority that we need to investigate these incidents. And that is a contradiction, right, from what CPD told me, that this new policy is under development and it's in draft form. And, if what the mayor said is accurate and CPD actually has all of the power that it needs to investigate these sort of incidents, the question I think then is, why did they not investigate the shooting of Miramar Martinez? And I don't know the answer to that. And, we've heard, after that shooting, we heard Superintendent Snelling say, look, don't box in federal agents. Don't impede them in their duties. If you put federal agents in a situation where they feel like they are at risk, essentially bad things could happen to you. Now, we know now, after, the federal government charged Miramar Martinez, that she essentially did nothing wrong, that she did not
do that, right? So,
right. She did not.
So the victim blaming was loud, but I don't think any investigation or any retraction of that has escaped a whisper.
Right. So the question is, if essentially Johnson's executive order, all it did was sort of say, hey, look, now we already had this power, but we didn't use this power. I think there are real questions about what would happen if and potentially when ICE and Border Patrol comes back to Chicago. That's not to say that ICE and Border Patrol, to a lesser extent, Border Patrol isn't out there on the streets of Chicago, because they absolutely are. But what they're doing is they're doing targeted sort of apprehensions and detentions, where they sort of have information that somebody who is potentially undocumented is going to be at this place at this time, and they will send agents to try to detain that person. It has not sort of created the sort of all-encompassing chaos of September and October that we saw here in Chicago. But I think that there is nothing stopping the Trump administration and the new Homeland Security Secretary, Mark Wayne Mullen, from sort of going back to that sort of enforcement posture. And I think the real question will be what happens if that happens, and how will local officials respond? And is the Chicago Police Department, under the authority of Mayor Brandon Johnson, willing to use their law enforcement ability to sort of keep the people of Chicago safe from federal agents? A very complicated and not straightforward question.
No, especially given that your first story showed once again that they lack the ability in many ways to keep the residents of Chicago safe from themselves. And so the idea that who is I am supposed to put my trust, faith in is, it'd be laughable if it wasn't such a cruel and frustrating situation. Not to get too insidery baseball, and maybe this is for my own edification, but state's attorney says it's inappropriate. The mayor is now saying, actually, it's a little redundant. CPD can do that. CPD saying, we were in the process of working on this already. Who has egg on their face in this situation, Heather? Because why would you put out an executive order that already is within the power? What's the order of operations here in terms of who I should be most frustrated with?
I think that a lot of Chicagoans feel like you do, that they were glad to see the mayor and the governor sort of, taking sort of what actions they could sort of at the height of this crisis, and that they felt in some way sort of protected, like they were, sort of like things were being done, and that we here in Chicago, were sort of in a better place than we were elsewhere. So now the question is, if that executive order had no actual meaning or authority, then the question I think is, well, why did he do it at all? And was it sort of designed to sort of be sort of just sort of a public act moment of signaling? Or is there actual sort of like teeth to it? And, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out, is this just is this about the show of it all? Is this just the razzle dazzle, as I like to call it, or is there actual like substance to what this executive order is? And I don't know the answers to that questions right now, but you can bet that there are going to be some more Freedom of Information Act requests coming CPD's way.
FOIA. We love to end every episode of CityCast Chicago the exact same way, and that is with me politely asking you to bring your ass back here for the next episode at the top of next week. But before we do that, some good news. Manny, what's your good news for us today?
Oh man, so many good news, so much good news. I don't know how to say it. I'm excited. This weekend I'm going to C2E2, so gonna nerd out a little bit, get some, anything X-Men related, and just have a lot of fun over there.
Come on, all right, talk to me, because I know we talked about C2E2 on Tuesday this week because our executive producer Simone Alisei is going. Are you dressing up? Are you going to see any particular of the guests? Like, what's your relationship to C2E2? Have you gone before? Tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I've gone before. I just like going to the vendors, shopping around and if I see, an artist or a writer I really like, I'll wait in line. Like anything, like I said, I love Jonathan Hickman, stuff he's done with X-Men. So, but I don't believe he's planning on being there when I go. But yeah, no, mostly just shopping and perusing, just searching around, and that's the part I like. I don't dress up or nothing like that.
I hope you have a fantastic time, man. I haven't been to C2E2 in a few years, but my brother, my best friend, loved going, and so I'm excited for everybody to get out there this weekend. Heather, over to you. What is your good news for us today?
Well, I know that my brand on this show is strong. I got to come with a cute animal story, or
to balance out the police violence
right.
that usually we talk about at the top.
I got to give the people what they want. And this week at Lincoln Park Zoo, a baby eastern black rhinoceros was born. Now, this black rhinoceros, it's the species in endangered, and it's really hard for zoos to breed these animals. But Lincoln Park Zoo apparently has like the ultimate mama black rhino, because this is her third kid.
Shout out Kapuki.
Yeah, and so she is getting it done for her species, and I have to give it up for another mom out there just, keeping everything on track and keeping those babies alive, because sometimes that's all you can do.
I know that King was born in 2013. Romeo was born in 2019. Have they given a name to Kapuki's third child? Or Kapuki's latest child?
Yeah, I do not believe so.
Okay. All right. Well, we will be on Black Rhino Name Watch over the next couple of days. Only about 1,000 of these remain in the wild due to massive conservation efforts. A lot of them were wiped out between the 60s and the 90s. I do appreciate when conservation efforts like this really show progress and give us some good news to celebrate.
Yeah. And let's not forget Lincoln Park Zoo, free, has been for forever, literally one of the jewels of Chicago. And the fact that they're helping to make such an impact on this species, I think, is something that we should all be proud of. And it's one of those things that I have always taken for granted as, a native Chicagoan, like, oh, it's just Lincoln Park Zoo. It's there. Like, it's doing awesome work. But it's a good reminder that it is doing great things.
I am going to wrap up our good news today with a huge happy birthday to my mama. I hope you have a wonderful birthday. She is out in D.C. with my sister and brother-in-law, enjoying a nice Fantasia concert with her friends. And so I will see her as soon as she gets back. Every year since, 5 or 6 years old, I have waken my mom up early in the morning with the lyrics to Boyz II Men, A Song for Mama. Aww. You taught me everything, and everything you've given me, I'll always keep it inside. You're the driving force in my life. So I'm gonna be doing that bright and early. Soon as she wake up, first thing she's gonna see is my mug. And I'm talking about singing the whole song. We get to like the first chorus and she's like clapping. We get into the very end. We getting through all the runs. All of them. We've done so many different versions of it over the years. But I am so excited to celebrate my mother's birthday. To many more, my friend, to many more. I hope you enjoy DC. I'll see you very, very soon. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today. I always appreciate y'all making time for the podcast. From Block Club Chicago, investigative reporter Manny Ramos. Always good to see you, man.
Great being back. Appreciate you.
And from WTTW, Heather Sharon, thank you for making time.
I'm happy to do it, and I appreciate you giving me the space to talk about issues that really matter to Chicago.
Before we get out of here, let's remind everybody listening, this ain't no one-man band. I couldn't possibly do all of this work by myself. CityCast Chicago does not exist without executive producer Simone Alisea, without producer Michelle Navarro, without our newsletter editor Emmy Mack, our audience development manager starting this week. Y'all show some love to Chima Okoro, one of the funniest Chicagoans around. Post-production from Jesse Weiser, roving editor Elizabeth Kama. The music we all love is from Sam Thousand, all the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. My last thank you, as it is every single episode, every single week, is for you, the people who listen to CityCast Chicago, who read our daily newsletter. I know I have said it a lot over the last few weeks that we are officially recognizing our 5 years, but I am doing that because I need y'all to know how much this means to me. I'm gonna be real. Me and Simone was somebody the other day. We did not expect to make it this far. And the only reason we're still here is because y'all keep showing up. And so please come back next week. Bring more friends, more family. Share us with your enemies. Like, I think it'd be a nice passive way to say you could be a better Chicagoan. Here's a resource. Honestly, I will talk to y'all very, very soon. In the meantime, in between time, don't hesitate to reach out at 773-780-0246. Leave your name, your neighborhood, and maybe some good news. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.